I'm very excited to turn over the clicker to my daughter Jen. I've been looking forward to this for a long time because I'm sitting back and it's really pretty cool. I think I've taught Jen over the years and Lauren, just as parents, but it's real exciting to now sit down and be taught by my daughter. So I turn it over to Jen.
Oh, thanks. So I am Jen Kracoff. I am a speech and language pathologist. I work at the Learning Prep School in Newton, which is a private academic day program for kids, primarily with language-based learning disabilities. But at this point, I'd be hard-pressed to find students who don't have a co-occurring attention or executive function or social cognition disorder. So I really get to work with it all. And then during the summers, because I don't like to have any time off, I work. There's a program run through MGH called Aspire, and we run a summer camp. And I specifically am the social thinking specialist over the summer. So I get to work. I've been there for 7 years, and I work with the kids who are all have spectrum disorders. I work with the kids in groups, and I also consult to the staff on specific students. So I've had a really great ability to work with a lot of different professionals. So while I am a speech language pathologist and I have training specifically in one area, I've had a world of experience with psychology and occupational therapy and physical therapy and related areas. So kind of piggybacking off of what
Jen, if I can just interrupt for 1 sec. Someone, Toyota Camry, license plate 2XM. If you could just move for people having trouble turning around, they don't want to hit you.
So I'm going to go kind of more of the clinical side versus the physical side. So the very first thing I want to start with is a phrase that was taught to me years ago, which is behavior equals communication. So the idea behind that is when kids do things, when we do things, when anyone does something, there's almost always, absent a severe condition, there's almost always a very logical reason why something's happening. We just have to figure out why. And I think that's what my dad has taught me over the years. From the physical side, there's always a reason physically, and it's the same clinically. There's almost always a reason why a kid is screaming or refusing or not paying attention, and we just have to figure that out. So for just kind of an overall purpose, we, specifically we are talking about the autism spectrum, Asperger's, ADHD population, but a lot of what I'm going to speak about applies to kids who may not have one of those diagnoses, but may have difficulties with language or sensory processing, executive function, attention, social skills. And I would love to get into every single one of those, but with the time constraints, we'll hit on a few, but just knowing that this can be kind of applied globally. So the first aspect I want to talk about is sensory processing, and this primarily falls under an occupational therapist domain. However, in the collaborative work that I do, if the only place that language was worked on was with me and sensory processing with the OT, we would never get anything done because everything would be piecemeal. So sensory processing, the definition is how the nervous system takes in information from the senses and appropriately responds. So that's how we're talking about, it's how sight works and smell and taste and touch. You put a cookie in your mouth and your mouth tells your brain that's sweet. And our kids can be sensory sensitive or sensory seeking. So if you conjure up an image of either yourself or a child who cuts off all the tags on his shirt, that's a sensitive child. Or the kid who wants deep pressure and sleep under blankets and tight squeezes. That's someone who's saying more, I need more. Proprioception is actually, we think of the 5 senses, there's another sense called proprioception, and that's where is my body in space. And it's kind of an abstract thing to think about. So I wrote down, have you ever had dental work done? So if you've ever had Novocaine, you know that feeling when you get numb and you're kind of like, is this my mouth? Like, is this, I think it's huge. It feels huge. And you kind of tap it and you're like, is this, what's going on? And that's kind of what our kids who lack proprioception may feel like. Like, is this my body? Where's my body? I don't know what's going on. And a lot of the crashing and slamming they do is giving input like, oh, okay, there we are. We're good. We know what's going on. So overall, a difficulty with sensory processing can look like a million things, but running and jumping and crashing and screaming and scratching. And again, it can, I think, well, we'll get to that. So, and 2 examples of intact sensory processing. So if I'm in the kitchen and I accidentally touch a hot stove, within milliseconds, my nervous system has said to my brain, that is hot, you're going to get hurt, pull your hand away right now. And I pull my hand away, and yeah, I might, have a red, and there's a million stores and music's playing. But even though my system notes that, it's able to kind of filter out what's important and what's not. So at first I may feel overwhelmed, but then I'm able to, my brain says, you know what, the light's not important, the music's not important, you're going to the Gap, so go to the Gap, or you're going to the meat aisle, so go to the meat aisle. And I get my shopping done, and I'm okay. And I enjoy leaving, but I'm okay. Now, if we have disordered sensory processing, the person who touches the hot stove, it may take the nervous system 5 full seconds to respond and say, this is hot. Now, in those 5 seconds, you have third-degree burns and you're in the hospital. And it wasn't necessarily like a situation where, well, Johnny, how did you not know the stove is hot? It was, I didn't know. I didn't realize my hand was there. I didn't know where my body was. I didn't realize it was that hot. The grocery store is kind of a classic example for a lot of our kids, but, imagine I walk into the grocery store and my nervous system says, okay, there's the music playing, the people talking, the carts are squeaking, I smell fish and cheese and whatever else. And my system said, this is all important. You must pay attention to every single one of these because I don't know what's the most important. So I'm going to panic, and I might cover my eyes, or I might cover my ears, or I might start to rock, or I might start to scream because I am so overwhelmed right now, and I don't know what to do, and the only thing I can do is fold into myself. All right, so that's kind of the sensory processing aspect. And again, there's a million different components to it. We see kids, and it all ties together, right? We see kids who may be tapping or kids who may be rocking, and there's many different reasons why they may occur, and, we may do things like have a kid sit on a bouncy ball so that while they're trying to do table work activities, they're able to move. I'm someone who sits and I bounce my leg constantly, and my parents laughed at me forever, but it works. I sit and I can concentrate so much better if I'm jiggling my leg. And I think it's, it's kind of finding that balance between what is me jiggling my leg inhibiting my learning? No. Is it distracting the rest of my classmates when I'm in school? No. So maybe I can do it, and it's not a big deal. All right, we're going to move on to language, which is my big domain of expertise. So I want to quickly go over the 3 broad types of language from a very, very simple way. So receptive language, kind of what you're taking in. The idea is, I understand what you're saying to me or what you're showing me. I can listen to the lecture that my dad just gave. I can read the handout. I get what that is saying. Expressive language is the flip side. I can formulate words to convey my thoughts, feelings, or ideas. If I'm upset, I can tell you why. If I'm hungry, I know how to find those words and put them out to you. And receptive language comes first. So that's why, babies, if they hear, as soon as they're still infants, but if they hear, do you want your milk? Their face lights up. They have learned that milk is that thing in that cup, and they are so excited about it. But they can't say the word milk. Eventually they might say ma or moo or something. But receptive comes first. And even with our delayed language kids, receptive comes first. I have 4th graders who, what they can understand is substantially greater than what they can produce. Now, processing is kind of a big one. So processing, I can take in information that you said, understand what the words mean, understand the general message that you're trying to say, figure out how I'm supposed to respond, and respond. And, I always, even if I look at that, I'm like, whoa, that's a lot that we are asking someone to do. So if someone asks me a question, I have to do all of that in a millisecond so that I can then respond. And when we have a kid who has delayed processing, that's when we often, so many of my students, it's a full 4 or 5 seconds before they're going to respond. And I don't move on. I think a lot of times in mainstream, or maybe before a student is diagnosed, or when teachers are still figuring it out, it's kind of, they didn't know the answer. All right, well, Sally, do you want to give it a go? But they know. They're just working it out. Okay, so that's what she said. All right, I'm going to say that. But then it's moved on. So if we give them that wait time, more often than not, if it's a processing component, they can give us the answer. It just takes that extra time. Okay. This is another example of processing overload. So imagine you went to Japan. Imagine you are an English speaker in Japan. And on a good day, you have a basic knowledge of simple Japanese words. You've learned bathroom, hello, goodbye, some foods, you can get by. But now you're in the middle of Japan, you're overwhelmed, you don't know where you're going. And because you're stressed, you go up to someone and you start to ask for directions. But, oh my God, I don't even know, I forget how to say that. I forget what the word for help or direction is. The more stressed out you get, the more you forget. And people, well-meaning citizens who live in Japan, come up to you and they say, are you okay? Do you need help? What are you trying to do? What's going on? How can I help you? And the more that they ask you questions, the more you're like, oh my God, now I know even less than I did a minute ago. I'm overwhelmed. I just need a minute to think. So the idea here is that when we have a kid or an adult or anyone, I think any of us, when we're overwhelmed, it gets hard to process a situation. You know, if there's a stressful medical procedure going on, or if you're in grad school and taking classes and you're overwhelmed, when you are overwhelmed, you are less able to process. And I think our natural instinct is to flood with more language. And we do it with our kids, and it comes from a very well-meaning place, like, tell me what's going on, what's wrong, why are you crying, can I help you? But that just adds 4 more questions that little Tommy needs to process. It's going to take even longer when we could have just given some kind of silent tools and supports. So another big problem with language that we don't think of because we're able to get around it, but when you really stop and think, we are very unclear with our language. So we say things like stop, pay attention, don't do that, get ready. And our kids who are neurotypical, meaning they have the average neurological functioning, they can figure out what this means. They can, stop, oh, well, what I'm doing is I'm poking my brother, okay, I better stop doing that. But for a lot of our kids who don't have that ability because they're still in a concrete language stage, or they explore processing, or they can't make a huge, global inference sense of the world, they don't know what stop means. Stop what? Stop breathing, stop standing, stop sitting, stop putting my hand up, because it could be any one of those. And so likely, they're not going to stop doing anything, and we may view it as non-compliance. You're in trouble, you did not stop. Well, did they know what we were asking? So instead of saying stop, we need to be more specific. Hands off your brother. Finger out of your nose. I say that one all day long. My favorite response to that the other day was, I'm just getting something. And I said, oh, you may get something in the bathroom. You may not do it in my office. Here's the hand sanitizer. All the time we hear teachers say, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. With most of my kids, they have no idea what pay attention means. It is 2 abstract words that people tell them all the time. They don't know how to do it, so they don't change anything. And we teach, in the social thinking curriculum that Michelle Garcia-Winner coined years ago, there's a terminology called whole body listening. And we have 14-year-olds that we go back and teach. Whole body listening means your body's calm, your eyes are looking, your ears are listening, your brain is thinking about what I'm saying. So rather than, saying to my student, Ben, you got to pay attention, Ben, is your brain thinking about what I'm saying? Eyes need to be looking. Instead of don't do that, which I'm sure someday when I'm a parent I will say frequently, because this is what seems to happen, we need to be specific. Katie, do not poke me with a pencil, because she won't know what she's doing otherwise. Get ready. How do I get ready? Get ready for what? How do I get ready? I am ready. I'm standing here. Oh, socks on, shoes on, wait by the door. Oh, that's something I can do. I know what you're saying. So I think the big thing that I try to help my colleagues figure out is this child truly being non-compliant? Is this a strict behavioral disorder? Or are they unclear with what we're asking? Are they just unsure and therefore we're not seeing the response? There's a million other components to language, and I would love to get into all of them. However, I'm sure you would not like me to get into all of them. So I'm just going to highlight a couple more that are big ones, just to be aware of. So a lot of our kids with a language disorder or a language disorder secondary to something else deal with word finding. And that's, we all have them, those tip of the tongue moments. Oh yeah, I ran into, that guy who, a lot of our kids have that. And I have a student with such severe word finding, it could be, she needs a lot of help, so she'll come in and say, over the weekend, and it's forever, and a lot of kids are like, come on. But her brain is trying desperately, searching in every little crevice. What's the word I'm trying to say? Is it this one? Nope, try again. Is it this one? Nope, try again. So we see that a lot. We have a lot of kids with disorganized language, and that can be due to inattention, due to executive function, due to language. And again, similar to what my dad said, this doesn't necessarily have to be a disorder. I am sure, because I can think of people, you all have friends or colleagues who, as soon as they start telling about your weekend, you're going to hear every little detail that happened. It's going to go on forever. And no, maybe they don't have a language disorder. Maybe that's just who they are. But the idea being, for our kids who take forever to make their point. I have a kid, I said, how was your Thanksgiving break when we got back? We were out of school half of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He said, what? On Wednesday, we got in the car and went to the airport. And I was like, oh no. And then when we got to the airport, we had to go to the gate. And, 5 minutes later I said, Ben, I want to hear about this. Why don't you tell me one more thing? He said, I'm only on Wednesday. But in his head, how is he supposed to pick the most important thing? It's all important. It's all part of what happened. Overall, our kids who have social pragmatic or social cognition challenges, making friends, taking perspective, getting along, a lot of it often comes back to language, because we need language to have meaningful social interactions. We need to know the kind of expected word choice to say. We need to know what a person's intent is. We need to be able to read nonverbal communication. So a lot of times, if a student, will hear, if a little kid doesn't ask another kid to play, well, go ask him to play. That's the nice thing to do. They might not know how. Well, how do I even ask that question? I don't know. And the emotional component, right? So we express ourselves with words, and some of us draw or paint or craft, and kids play. But for the most part, we need words to say, I am so upset right now. Today at school, such and such happened. If we don't have access to the words, or if we never had the words to begin with, I'm going to scream. It's a great way to convey how mad I am. I'm going to bite because I'm angry. I don't have the words to say, I am so mad right now and I don't know what to do. So a couple tools for what do we do when these things pop up. So what I have learned, and it is hard, is when someone is an overload or not responding the way we would like them to be responding, we stop talking and we give their brain however long it needs to catch up. And again, our tendency is to flood with more. What do you need? What can I do? How can I help? And we are so well-meaning, but the best thing we can do sometimes is just stop. And it's almost like, I'm not going to think of a good example of catching up, but something to do with giving your brain the time, okay, processing. To clarify, did they understand what I even asked? Did I tell them just to stop, or did they tell them, come on? Maybe I could say that again in a different way, more specifically, and maybe then those words will be clearer. Simplify, another big one. I observe and work with a lot of different teachers at my school, and I think some of our personalities are to talk, some are to not. And it's hard for those talkers because they think, and understandably so, this is how they're conveying their lessons or their material. But maybe I could convey my point in the same way, but with less language. So the example here, if I'm saying to a child, since we're going to the grocery store, you need to get ready. So why don't you start to get ready to go and grab a pair of socks from upstairs and then put your shoes on? And most kids will follow that, no problem. A child who does not have a language disorder or, a co-occurring condition, no problem. But for these kids that we're talking about, that's not even going to be processed. So that's when we go to socks on, then shoes. And we can start with, we're going to the grocery store, first socks, then shoes. That's something they can follow. That is much simpler. And then another big one is to bypass. If language just is not working, how can we get around language? Can I use a picture schedule? Can I have a picture of socks and a picture of shoes? And we do things like this all the time with our kids. You know, I have a lot of times when the kids come into my office, they know the routine, and for some of them, I have a visual on the desk that has a picture of a binder under a chair, because that's where they put their binder, and then it has a picture of a pencil, so they get out a pencil. And I don't even have to speak, I just point. And that way, there's no extra stuff coming into them. They just focus on what they need to do. And even written language, for our kids who can read and who are proficient readers, I have had so many conversations with overwhelmed or stressed or kids who are coming out of a meltdown, and we don't speak, we write to each other on a piece of paper. What happened? I was so mad when so-and-so. And if we tried to do that through speaking, likely the meltdown would increase again. You know, I would get a shoe thrown at me. But when there's no oral language, written language is much easier to digest for someone who can read. All right. The last big area I want to talk about is executive function. And this is kind of a buzzword, and we hear it a lot. And it, I think, primarily ties into our ADD, ADHD population, but it also ties into everything. And I think that's what I've learned in my years. Everything ties into everything. And the more we try to say, you work on this and you work on this, the less successful we are. So executive functions are essentially a set of skills that allow our brain to manage various cognitive processes, which means nothing. You know, I don't think that's a very helpful definition, but the idea is our skills like planning and starting a task and problem solving and remembering and stopping, all those things that a lot of us are able to do without thinking, but a lot of our kids struggle with. So these are things like, I can remember what you told me a few minutes ago. That would be a memory component. I can stop myself from running into the street even though I see a really cool rock there. And that would be an inhibition. So our kids who are going to bolt into the street are not necessarily defying the rule of never go into the street, but their brain is saying, oh my God, that's the coolest rock, I need to bring it inside immediately. And the inhibition piece is not kicking in to say, nope, that's the street, you know the rule, you can't do that. This planning and execution, when I'm getting ready for bed, I can complete the little steps that make up that larger task. Because getting ready for bed actually involves so many little steps when you really break it down. And last, when I'm working on something and it doesn't go as I planned, I can figure out what went wrong and an alternative for what to do. So we all do that in our jobs, whether you work on a computer or with kids or with whoever. When something, if you're writing a program in Excel and it's not working, you figure out, oh, well, my row and the column and whatever it is, and you fix it. A lot of times, this right here, this inability to problem solve from an executive function standpoint is why we see a kid ball up a piece of paper and throw it. I can't do it. Or working on a puzzle. This is impossible. I can't do it. Because that piece isn't kicking in that says there is a way to do this. We just need to figure it out. So this example, tell your brother that dinner is ready, actually involves a lot of things. It involves remembering what mom just said to me, first of all. Figuring out how to find my brother in the house, because my house has a lot of rooms, and where do I start? What do I do? Go find him instead of continuing to watch mom cook. So that's kind of the in one ear, out the other. Not get distracted by a toy on my way to find him. So maybe I get all those things, I'm walking, I know I'm going to check my bedroom, but I run into my stuffed animal. Oh my God, my mommy, I forgot all about it. And I start playing. I totally forgot what I was even doing. And then maybe I make it all the way to my brother, but I don't remember how I'm supposed to even ask that question. I know that mom's in the kitchen. I know it has to do with dinner, but how do I formulate that question to even ask him? So maybe I come back to mom, or mom finds me in the hall playing with my stuffed bunny and says, Jen, I told you to ask your brother. And I knew that. I did, but I just couldn't complete it. I didn't have all those skills. So again, and I think this is our theme, is the lack of whatever it is, in this case, lack of task initiation or completion, Is it ignoring or purposeful noncompliance? Do I have oppositional defiant disorder and I'm purposely not listening to what my mom said? Well, possibly, but in this example, no. In this example, it's a lack of tools. I don't have the tools to do those 5 steps required to complete this task. So, if mom says, tell your brother that dinner's ready, and mom hands me a piece of paper and a pencil, and written down are 3 steps. 1, walk to bedroom. 2, say, dinner is ready. 3, walk back to the kitchen. She hands me the paper, she hands me the pencil. I walk to the bedroom, I check it off. I say, dinner is ready, check it off. I walk back to the kitchen, I check it off, I did it. I'm hugely successful, I'm proud of myself, that was easy, all because of what she did to modify. It's the exact same instruction, tell your brother that dinner's ready. But she gave me those supports to figure out how to do it. Okay. So, we aren't that different from our kids, right? So, you know, I said that I jiggle my leg all the time, but how many of you sleep under a blanket no matter how warm it is? I'm one of those people. How many of you chew gum to focus? Wear headphones when you're on the T or in the city to block out the noise? Make a grocery list. You would never expect yourself to remember everything you need. You write it down. Forget what people say to you if you're stressed or distracted. Tap a pencil. Jiggle or shake your leg. This is a big one. Hate the sound of others chewing. We all have some of these and many more, but what we have are effective, socially expected, productive strategies to manage them. So I have learned that if I am on the T and it's overwhelming and loud, I pop my headphones in and I listen to music and that calms me. If I hadn't been taught that, or for me, if I hadn't learned that, maybe I would start to scream because I'd be overwhelmed. Maybe I would start to rock. And that would make sense. Maybe I would start to script my favorite TV show because that is a calming memory and thought for me. So I guess our challenge, or what we need to work towards, is helping our kids find these strategies, because they can use them just as we can use them, but they're not going to necessarily figure them out on their own. No one had to teach me that I need to make a grocery list. I just know that. But a lot of our kids don't just know that. So in sum, our goal with our kids, with anyone you work with, to figure out why the behavior is occurring or why something we desire from our kids is not happening. Because there really is almost always a logical reason. And if we switch up our format, give an additional tool, change our language, we will likely see success. And then we'll feel good and our kids will feel good. And the big thing is to look for the why. Instead of this is what they are doing or are not doing, we need to add that additional component. Well, why are they doing this? Or why are they not doing this? And teach those strategies. And so we then meet our kids halfway, and we're not fighting their neurology, and we're not saying, well, you need to do it this way. You need to know what I'm saying. You need to know what pay attention means, because it's not going to work. And we're going to be frustrated, and they're going to be frustrated. But we work with them and with their neurology to have everyone be successful. Okay. Any questions? Yeah.
For secondary working memory, are there many strategies on the job that can be effective? And because I've tried some that are completely ineffective. And have you found that there are certain causes for secondary working memory issues in general, and treatments that you've heard of that might work for certain people?
That's a good question. I think a lot of, I don't want to get into too specifics right now, but overall for that working memory piece, I do a lot of working memory things when it comes to language, and I'm a speech-language pathologist. I think a lot of different professionals do have those tools, whether it's training you or training your brain to write things down. There's different, I'm working with a student now, and I'm teaching him how to listen for keywords, and that's something that I don't say, okay, when you're asking me that question, I'm going to listen for the most important words. We just do it automatically. So I think there's definitely a good list of strategies out there. And I know there's some executive function coaches and programs and things like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
What about the phones? I see a lot of the kids escaping on their phones and adults escaping on their phones, and all kinds of conditions. What causes that? What's going on with that?
So you mean aside from the typical, I want to text my
Yeah.
friend, but kind of
But
default into it?
constant texting and, you know, or even at the supper table, they'll be, you know,
Yeah.
texting and doing Snapchatting back
Yeah.
and forth and, you know.
Well, I think part of it is just for better, for worse, the way the world is going. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. We were, she and I were getting coffee at Starbucks, and there were about 10 fifth graders. They were all texting each other, Snapchatting each other, taking pictures of each other, and then posting it on Instagram. And I think part of it, you know, she and I were laughing, and I said, you know, if we had these when we were in fifth grade, we would have done the exact same thing. And I think so part of it is just accessibility. I do think for a lot of our kids, the phone is a nice barrier. There's no eye contact. There's no tone of voice. I can take as long as I want to formulate a text message before I need to respond, and no one's going to walk away because they think I don't know what to say. So I think there is also that component. And I feel the same way. You know, if I get an email and I don't know how to respond, I can take all day, and I'm like, okay, but I could say it this way, could say it this way. But if you ask me a question right now, I just stood here, like, you guys are going to start to think weird things about me, right? So I think technology for a lot of our kids can be a really useful tool. A lot of kids seem to, and the reason I do not know, but when a screen is put in front of them and for learning purposes, they can learn. Their brain just knows a screen. I can navigate the iPad. I'm successful. I know how to open this window. I have kids who can type paragraphs and can write words, and it's drastically different. So the answer is I don't know, but I think part of it is just a world where we're at, and part of it is kind of that nice barrier between us and them, whoever the them is.
I just wanted to jump on that because I have a 10-year-old who's got all these issues we've talked about, and one of our biggest issues is trying to get him off the phone or the right and try to minimize it. So I guess the question is it my fear as a parent or my observation is it makes whatever's going on worse, and that's what I struggle with. Like, so I understand that it gives him a sense of control. It calms, in some ways, it can calm him down.
Yes.
He can go from complete meltdown to totally calm. So I do let him do it at times, but the question is it somehow making things worse?
I don't know. I think, that I would just have to speculate. I don't know any research one way or the other does or does not make it worse. I think I have seen a lot of success in placing, rather than in the moment, time's up, but kind of giving a preemptive, I'm going to set the timer, you have 30 minutes, which I'm sure you do all of those, or, once homework is done, then you can have your phone and things like that, or, when the clock hits this, phone time's up and we're going to do a puzzle together. So I think placing those limits are helpful. I, in my work, have much more success when a student knows that change is coming versus if I were to just say, all right, we're done. Because then it's like, what are you talking about? No. Yeah. But if they can see the timer, see the clock ticking down, whatever it is, I think, and have talked about it all day. When you get home from school today, I'm going to set the timer. It'll be 30 minutes long. And okay, now we're driving home from school. Remember, when we get home, I'm going to set the timer. And as much previewing as possible, I find really helpful. Thanks.
And I'd just like to say from one of your slides, one memory that came back from, I believe it was elementary school, was I was doing this artwork, probably like 8 or 9 times, nothing was going right. Finally, I just lost it, ran out of the classroom, out the back door, started to go one direction, here's the counselor coming at me, start to run the other direction, there's another one that basically tackled me down. And unfortunately, where we were was actually a pile of rocks. Here they are pushing my face into the rocks. Here I am so frustrated, blood's absolutely flowing. And I was like, well, what are you doing to me?
Right.
I just had to get out of that room.
You just had to get out. Exactly. I mean, I'm sorry it happened, but it's a great example to illustrate this point, but you weren't thinking, I'm going to leave school.
But also they didn't understand.
Right. They didn't get what was going on.
And I don't remember what happened after that. I think I was in timeout or something.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I don't remember.
Wow.
Too long ago.
I have to tell you something funny and something that's really touching. One of our daughters has 3 kids who have ADD issues, and she got to the point of being so distracted, with the kids distracted with their phones and their computers and stuff, she bought a safe. and she put the things in the safe
Oh.
when she didn't want the kids to use them.
Wow.
Okay?
There we go.
I mean, it sounds funny, but it worked. And the other thing that you were saying that made me think, how many times that we judge when our kids or our grandchildren say, when we ask them to do something, I don't know about you, but the first thing I think of is that they're being very disrespectful to me. But as you were saying, they're not processing maybe what I'm asking them to do, because I can all the things I want them to do. And I'm thinking to myself, would it be much easier just to write out and say, do this, and be more loving about it? Because when we think kids are being disrespectful to us, we get annoyed and we get angry with them, and that's not what they need. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
One and two.
I would like to know up to what age, I would say, in a regular child without any like neurological problem, like up to what age should you be that detailed, that specific with language?
So you're talking for a neurologically typical like 4-year-old, should you be
Yeah,
that
like
detailed?
2, 3, 4, yeah, up to what age?
I think there really is no right or wrong. I think if you are asking your typically developing 4-year-old to put her shoes on and she's not responding, maybe you get a little more specific. But I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think if you give all the detail and she does fine, great. If you don't give the detail and she does fine, great. I think for a child who's developing language typically the way that I did, I would have developed it no matter what. Does that make sense? Regardless of how specific or how, because I was gleaning all of those facts. I think, so I guess the nice answer is I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think you aim for success, and whatever you do to make it successful is fine.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to add to what the woman said. I found that with my son, my voice goes right through him when I yell. Like it physically hurts when I block his ears. So if I hit him, then he calms down and then we can communicate. But my voice really goes right through him.
That
so
is
he's
such a
not
great
being
point.
disrespectful, covering his ears. And I'm like, oh no, you listen.
Right.
It hurts him.
Right.
So now that I know that, I don't do it as often.
That is such a great point. No, and you're right. I think, we tend to, our voices raise, well, I said put your shoes on, and we get frustrated. But then they are processing even less because, oh my God, this is stabbing me. This feels like needles all over my body. So absolutely, a quiet, calm voice can be more successful. It's a great point.
My son does that too. He's an adult.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, is it from the ADD, ADHD, or?
I have just found it could be that, but it's the way they process it and the way it goes in. And I don't know, my son has had tubes in his ears, but it is, he told me, Mom, it hurts. It physically hurts him. So he closes, So now that I know that, I whisper.
But is it autism or is it ADD, ADHD? Do you know?
Pick one.
Right.
Right.
So I think
I
I
don't
can
know.
speak to that sensory component we talked about. So just as, right now I don't notice the tags in my shirt, but someone else might have had to leave here to go cut off the tags because they felt it so strongly. If I hear a loud noise, I notice it, but I have students where if they hear a loud noise, their sensory system reacts tenfold. So it's magnified greater. Or I'm super sensitive to spice and my husband is not. So we can eat the same food, but I'm going to feel like I'm going to die from that food and he's not. And so I think it's a difference in how the information comes in and the threshold for it. So the threshold for her son's noise is so low, so it can take anything to send them over the edge. And then there can be kids where you could yell and they're only then going to start to, their threshold is much higher. Does that make sense?
I would say again from my perspective that sort of a wall would go up. If I'm not understanding what you're saying and I'm trying to understand you, you getting loud is only having me push you further away, like back off, like relax, I don't get it. Slow down.
Right, and you getting louder. It's not that I can't hear you, it's that I can't understand or process it. That's a great point.
Okay, well, thank you all very
so
much. Jen and I will be here to answer your questions if you have any, and thank you all for coming.
I am as well.
And Ray's here too. Thank you, Ray.